Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We literally are on take 2. Justin McWilliams, thanks for joining me, brother.
Absolutely.
So listen, you and I never met before, haven't spoken before, a couple texts back and forth. We were supposed to record the other day. I got pulled away because of all the nonsense going on in the Northeast with the dry conditions and the fires going on. And so I appreciate you. You were a gentleman to let me run with that. So we rescheduled, and this was literally, hey, you available this morning? Let's go. And here we are. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. And I say busy, it's only because I looked through your pedigree. I mean, I've seen you on some other shows. I've heard some of your content. I follow the search culture and so on. But search culture on Facebook, Brothers in Battle Training Cadre, Firefighter Rescue Survey. You're a captain of a rescue company in Oregon. I mean, the list goes on, brother. You don't stop.
Yeah, it takes a toll. I don't necessarily stop, but I'm trying to actually do a little bit better job of telling people no. And it gets interesting. It definitely gets interesting. I mean, like you say, I get text messages, emails every day. Hey, can you look at my content? Can you look at my new article? Can you look at my new book? You name it. And realistically, nowadays, I want to, because that's my purpose, right? My purpose isn't all the rest of this shit. The purpose is actually to make change. And how do I help make change? Is actually them helping be spread the word and make sure that we're on the same page and get the right people into their departments to chat with their battalions and their operations chief and shit. So I do try to take time for that, but sometimes it gets ridiculous. But when I do look over that shit, so I just had one the other day. Some guy wrote an article, and there's a couple pages, and I'm like, well, I got a minute. So I don't know, probably on the potty or something, and I look it over, and I just don't hold back. I wrote him back, hey, dude, here's the deal. Your purpose states that it is to do this. I'm like, you need to delete every single word in every single sentence that doesn't have impact. Do not fill gaps, just make an impact, and then tell me the why and tell me the ups and the downs. Realistically, when I talk to people or when I read papers or whatever I'm doing, is that when I can hear them just speaking truth and actually get down to the nitty gritty and not waste my time, I'm in. So the other day, I sent out an email. We had an underride. I wasn't on the call, but we had to underride a car underneath a tractor trailer. And I heard from the battalion how it went, and it went well. It was 28 minutes, dude. This car was crushed underneath this thing. They got it lifted, pulled out in 28 minutes, then the extrication of 2. And I sent out an email to all the trucks and the heavy and the squad. Just said, hey, let's just review. I talked to the first 2 officer of that day on the truck, and I'm like, hey, mind if I send out a review? And they're like, yeah, dude, let's just review of our steps, 1 through 5 of what we do. And I don't have time. I don't put in there, hey guys, you guys did great, blah, blah, blah. I don't have time for that. I don't want them to spend any time reading anything. So it just goes into the, hey, this is our review this and move forward. Now that pushes back. I get pushed back quite a bit on that kind of stuff.
Of course you will. Absolutely you will.
Yep. And, but people got to realize is that, if I have something to say, if that's negative, either one, it wasn't worth saying to them, hey, you guys missed this step or this step, because it doesn't matter. It's dude, you'll read the steps and you'll know, or I'll let you know. And I'm not going to do it in an email. I'll pull you out on the side and say, hey, man, this is what we could do better. So same with that kind of content. People send me shit. I'm busy. But, just writing back, dude, I'm and it was kind of, he read between the lines. He's like, dude, it sounds like I got a lot of work to do. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, though, right? And this is an interesting way to start this episode, because I didn't expect it to go here, and I'm so excited it did. Being direct is often nowadays being looked at as bullying, for lack of better words, right? Which I have a really hard time with, right? Is that, instead of just being confident and strong in your conviction, you're looked at as almost bullying or being short or being temperamental. And I think that's a crock of shit. I think we need a level of directness in the fire service more than ever. And I think that we've gotten too soft. We've rounded the edges, and we need to get back to a place of, I don't need to pat you on the ass. Let's really dive in and look at this and build on it, right? I mean, the directness, I think, is important now more than ever. And it has to be given, but really well received. And people don't receive directors well anymore.
No, absolutely. I mean, dude, I do it at the firehouse. I do it I was talking to somebody the other day. Actually, we were talking about this because I sent out when I send out emails, they're all kind of like that. And one of the guys said, he worked for I think In-N-Out Burger back in the day, and I think that's what we were talking about. And he goes, they get their ass chewed, and then they're like, "Hey, dude, anything positive come out of this?" And he goes, "Everything I didn't mention was positive. You guys did great on." Because we don't have time for that. And I love that. But yeah, like it's about the receiving end, but also like for us to receive. And so like, how do you openly receive? How do you do that? Like obviously over time, you got to show it. Some years ago, one of the things I did for that, because I'm not always taken as the positive and stuff, I think it's
I believe
natural.
That. I believe it. Yeah.
I think it's natural for us to sometimes get our feelings hurt. And so when we go to fires, and then we'd have tailboard talks back in the day, and then it kind of went away. So I'd call him as an officer, and I'd say, "Hey, dude, let's do a little howdy round." And then I just start with whatever I fucked up. I'm like, "Hey, dude, I went in the door. I did a live fire layout, and I didn't actually hit the back wall behind the door, and I missed the kitchen. And so we searched his house, and then I did find it on the way out, which I wouldn't have prioritized the kitchen anyways. We already located fire." But I messed that up, and this is what I should be doing. And then I'll talk to somebody else and go, "Hey man, what'd you mess up?" And then, cause I don't care about like, "Oh, I arrived, I see a 1-story, a 2-story, a fire coming out of here." We all saw that. I don't care about that. You're wasting our time. Tell me, did we pull the right line? Did we locate fire early? Did we, did we have the smoke conditions, dictate like how we search inside? Like, oh, it's a light smoke, but yet we know there's smoke coming out of the eaves. Well, fire in my head, I start going through a couple things. I'm like, well, is it above us? Is it it's wintertime? Is it going to be somewhere around the fireplace? Something of the sort. And so we need to really look at that, because that's how we learn. I've been on the job for almost 25 years, and every fire, there's something to learn. There's something to grow. So I don't know how long you've been following search culture, but like when it started out that I wanted information,
Right.
and it didn't end up that way, dude. Like it was more about, okay, people don't know about search with the shit. They, people think big department, they understand. No, they don't, dude. I've learned over time that, dude, some of the best searchers are coming out with the 1, 2, 3 station departments, but then the content on there, as you know, when you put stuff out there, it's like it can be taken as negative and whatnot. And it's like, well, okay, it can be, but let's have a discussion. And so that's what really the pages kind of turn into, and how I try to run my life is like, let's have discussion and let's come forward with that information. But it's also about how we talk to each other. It's like,
so we gotta get away from the headlines. Like we're a headline reading world today, right? Not just in the fire service, but within society. All we do is read the headlines, and nobody wants to put the time in to actually learn the narrative behind the headline. The headline's there to grab your attention. Do you have a couple minutes to spend to go a little bit deeper to really get a true understanding of where the headline's coming from? Most people do not. Most people will form an opinion based on a headline long before they want to invest any time into anything more. That is really where we've come. But the problem is now, right, is like you take a position. And I love that the search culture was started to make yourself better, seeking information. Hey, I can't find what I'm looking for, but maybe if I create something, the information will come. That is a wonderful thing. Wonderful.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, it's definitely interesting. It even divided some of our houses, like when it first started.
I bet it has.
Like even the name of like it used to be called Support the Primary Search, and people took it as, oh, it's all about search. Well, fire attack or whatever it is, and it's like, well, realistically, it's all about the civilians. That's all there's to it, and everything does support the search. But as time went on, it's like, yeah, there's some division. It was weird, but then it's like, well, I wonder how many other people out there that I don't have discussion with think the same thing. So I was like, So years later, we changed it to search culture, which I'm not above. I'm like, I don't care. Like I'm not going to have such conviction with like a name of like the page or something. It's about actually the content and the discussion. Where I get tons of backlash as well with, like I used to, I'd write all lowercase. I do everything lowercase because it's not about that shit. And then, dude, people would hey message me.
Of course,
dude, you can't do that. You sound like an idiot. You look like an idiot. It's hard to follow you, and it's like it's hard to tell our chiefs like, but you don't even know how to do vocabulary. And I'm like, well, I do it on purpose. It's actually tougher to do all lowercase than it is not to do regular. But I'm like over time, years. I'm like whatever. It was only a handful of people. Whatever, dozen over years. But I'm like, all right, whatever. If that creates three more followers that they sit around their table, fine.
It's a greater impact.
I don't care.
It supports the mission, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, look at this. Yeah. So this stupid shirt that I'm wearing now and this hat and stuff, that all started because I did a live stream, which I didn't even know what it was back in the day. And I got put off on leave for it. And I was wearing this and they called it plaid is clad, all this other crap. But like, I redid those videos. So that video got deleted, but I redid the videos on FireX Talk. And you read the comments and they're like, man, this guy has good information, but I can't take him serious. Look what he's wearing.
I love it.
Like what I'm wearing, like because I'm not wearing penny loafers and khakis, pleated khakis and shit. Like I'm wearing a button-up shirt and a hat. Like I'm not coming off my farm and coming up here and just in dog crap and horse manure. Like I'm clean.
Yeah. No, I get it. Listen, there's a level of delivery that's required, but things have changed. The landscape has changed. And, I don't think you need a jacket and tie anymore to deliver solid information. And, ultimately, I think and it's something that I really liked about you is a couple things that you talk about. But the one thing is that we all can find common ground. And I was listening to something the other day with you, just doing a little bit of homework and so on. And I firmly believe that experience is necessary. We need experience in the fire service more than ever before. But we can't push aside all levels of experience. That 1-year fireman, that 3-year fireman, that 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, right? And with that comes a level of knowledge and experience that typically comes with your longevity in the fire service. That's super important, but then being able to take it and find common ground between the 1-year, 5-year, and 10-year, 20-year absolutely matters. And I heard you kind of talking about that a little bit, East Coast versus West Coast, all those type of things. We can find common ground. But the one thing I wanted to kind of ask you about is the importance of the saying firefighting is local.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we broad stroke the fire service. We just make generalized sweeping statements. And when I look at like the search culture and when I look at the firefighter rescue survey, I know everything there, whether the ups and downs on the bar graph, the pie charts, whatever it is, success rates, building, all these different things. But we still have to make sure that we translate and transpose that information to our local first due response, correct?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. As in, so 99.9%, and that's just that's a real number, but actually made up data, that those are like non-high-rise fires that are being collected. So if you work in a high-rise area, if you work in Toronto or wherever, that the number for the bedrooms, like stuff like that, it's different because you're going into a lot more studios and and whatnot, and so you're going into areas that this is just a studio apartment with like the kitchen up front and one room which is going to be the bathroom or something. So like those numbers aren't the same. So you'd have to really break them down, and so that's where. So when I talk about like firefighting is local, when people say it, and I'm like, well, it's not necessarily like we need to get on the same page first off. So where you're at and where I'm at, our waterway's the same. If you have a 1883 two and a half story with a basement balloon frame construction, you show up with a 3-person crew, and then you have a 2-person truck. Our priorities are still the same. That's what I'm saying. I'm more saying is that like, I'm more saying that like when people do the broad stroke of like firefighting's local, I believe they also are saying like what you're like, oh, yeah, well I only run with 2 or I run with 3 or we only have engine companies, we don't have truck companies. Yeah, but that's coast to coast. So that's not local. That is actually your department's problem. So to me, it's more about fire departments have local problems, which would be staffing and or apparatus and stuff. So not necessarily of how we search we should be breaking it down. Like how we search a bedroom on the East Coast, West Coast, and the South, and Alaska should be the same. Because when we break it down. When there's one person to search, we should, our priorities are still the same. Locating fire, no matter where you're out in the world, is still the priority. And that's kind of how, and so I don't necessarily break it down and explain it all the time because I'm more into discussion and I'm like you said, we're a headliner freaking department and world just in general. Yeah. And so it's more about let's make a statement. And then let's have discussion. That's
what I'm worried about, though, Justin. Are the discussions happening on the local level, right? It's like somebody watches your program, or they watch you on a podcast, or they follow your page, and there's these things that are being said and shown, and then it's like they bring it home, but nobody else is ready to have that conversation. We don't then get deep. We just stay pretty wide, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that happens in my own department. I mean, that happened 15 years ago in my department, that we would have, we'd have young guys going out and taking classes, and it still happens. I hear it all the time. People call me all the time. Hey, I got all these guys taking classes. We love that. That's great. But gosh, they come back and they're like, oh man, these guys, this is the way to do it. But every class I've been to, almost every class of lecture or hands-on around the nation, they're like, dude, we are there's a lot deeper than we're just here for 1, 2, 5 days, and this isn't the only way. We are telling you, this is how we train together, and then you have to do takeaways, but you have to dig deeper into it. And how does it apply to your department? You can't go back there and go, hey, this is who said it, because it doesn't matter who said it. It's why they said it. And then how do we bring it back to our department? How do we go through those reps? And does it make sense within our department, with our staffing, with our buildings and stuff like that?
It takes work to apply what you learn. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people shy away from doing the work. They really do. Or their culture, their fire departments don't want them to do any extracurricular work. That's the other thing, right? Is holding your own company or department accountable. That's a big part of it too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's layers to this. And, how long you been in the service?
Going on 30 years.
Yeah, so you've learned 30 years it's drastically changed in 30 years.
No, 100%.
I mean,
100%.
Almost everything has changed in 30 years.
But I'll tell you the one thing that. Oh, go ahead. Finish your thought, please.
I was just thinking, I don't at least on the West Coast, that where I'm at, so many things have changed. I'm just saying, the way that we have outside training, outside influence, social media,
100%.
What we wear. Certification versus experience, and actually knowledge and education. So RIT versus search. I mean, search wasn't even a thing for a lot of the places.
I remember the very first thermal imaging camera, right? I mean, 1995, 96. It was the first camera was a toaster with a little pedestal handle, and it's we've come a very long way, and I think the fire service has become very dynamic in the last 30 years. There's no doubt, right? And I think that the speed in which we've progressed and innovated probably outweighs any other time in the American Fire Service. I kind of believe that in a way, just with technology and advancement. But what that does, though, is the one thing that I've seen is our firefighters today are better educated than ever before. But what I worry about is where we take that education, but then apply practical experience. And sometimes we take better educated people, they have less experience, but because they're in the books or because they have more information, sometimes they get a little bit more dangerous than a guy with actual practical experience. And it's experience versus theory. I believe, right? We can read all the books. We can listen to all the podcasts. We can go out there and go to every freaking conference. But if you've never done it, you've never done it.
Yeah.
That matters in this game.
Oh, it absolutely matters. Yeah, that's so that is where, so you're kind of bringing up, going back a couple minutes ago, you're saying is some of the statements I make and what does that look, and when they go back to their departments. is that realistically, I'm in a time in my career right now that I'm trying to do more open discussion and less like conferences. So most of these conferences, right? They're lectures. They're not discussions. The
Right.
discussions happen at lunchtime, at break, in the evenings, but I only get to capture a couple people or whatnot. So my new venture of the last couple of years is more about taking over departments instead of doing these conferences. And it's not like instead of going to these everybody that's rah that's already in it, they are like, I'm just preaching to the choir most of the time, but they're getting some information, but they don't know how to apply it. Like you're saying, the theory versus the experience. Well, people are like, if you're a department that does not do topside vent, it'd be, I think it'd be almost impossible, or ish, for you to bring topside vent to your own department. You need outside influence for somebody that has the experience of doing it. I think that'd be the best way to doing it. And so that's where I'm trying to inject myself for search. It's not almost most departments search, but not the way that we do it. Not ahead of hose lines, above the fire. We go through windows normally, but like, so when I have departments that have taken years of all the paperwork and they've adopted everything. But the problem is they don't have the experience to actually put it forward. And then when they have this pushback or they have issues, it's like, well, yeah, like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you guys haven't even located fire, but you're dumping through windows.
Yeah.
Like, that's the priority. And it's like, well, because they don't know the why, and they don't understand that it's like, well, when you locate fire, this happens and this happens on the fire ground. And so, yeah, that going to that local area and having discussion is a big deal. Bringing in the fire chief, the ops chief, the battalion chief, the training chief, the captains, everybody, because then they can talk as well. And like I tell them every class when I go to these departments, hey, this is your department. I'm going to change your department before I leave. I want you to question me. I want you to push back, have a discussion with me. And we have all the time in the world. Let's go way deeper into these discussions. And if you don't believe in it, push back.
I like it. I like it a lot. I worry just a little bit, and let me give you just some of my take, because dealing with departments and people like I do, and I've gotten to just understand a lot of how the intricate workings of all this works, right?
Yeah.
Culture is based on experience, right? So when we're building culture in the fire service, whether it's your firehouse or the fire ground, there's a culture that it's assigned to it. And when you have a positive culture that is putting or prioritizing the process, meaning the process of search, before we can even enter the building, we need to have, a couple things in place, right? We have to have a process in place so that search, which is the priority of our actions, but the other things lead up to it. Stretching lines, locating fire, opening up, ventilation, things like that, right? Those will allow us to perform search in the best possible way for firefighters to have success. Part of culture is years and years of knowing that, and we teach our people every little intricacy and nuance of what it takes to search effectively, because we have a good culture in place that outlined for you many years through your career how to do it effectively and so on. When you come in and you start talking about, hey, this, that, and this and that, there's no way to grow that ability overnight. And it's going to take, from the conversation of Justin McWilliams coming into our fire department and turning everything upside down, to people having real conversation with you, to then implementing and affecting a different type of culture, takes time. It's longevity. It's not done overnight. And I think what happens is this is where the rubber needs to meet the road. This is where, after Justin McWilliams leaves, dropping bombs everywhere he is, the conversations have to continue so that the younger generations understand that it's a long game and it doesn't happen overnight. But everybody wants everything today. So if Justin McWilliams is talking about X, Y, and Z, tomorrow they want to implement that and make that happen, but they haven't done the work leading up to it. That's, I think, where the real disconnect is. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, so with that, I used to tell people it takes 10 years. 10 years to change that. Because that's what it took our department, and that's just from my experience, right? 10 years. And it obviously depends on how big your department is, how many fires you get experience, how much pushback. How much are we
Absolutely.
trying to change? I mean, we were changing nozzles and hoses, and
Right.
dude, we were changing so much stuff. So with that, what you're talking about is that what that initial mindset is just that lecture, that discussion is just the mindset. That's it. So we have to do follow up, and that's the thing. Like you're saying, like this is years of work, and the work only begins after I leave. And
Yes.
so when I do the departments, what happens is that I give them all our paperwork of like our manual, our videos, whatever, the paperwork of how we flow things. But we also give them layouts of like, okay, within the next 6 months or 2 years or 3 years, I don't care. Here's 6 2 hour ish or whatever, depends on how you want to lay it out, of drills that you're going to bring your whole department through. So the first drill would be you come down, you're going to teach them how to do drags, victim up and out a window, masking up with gloves on, and that's it. Like we come down there, and then you start. What has happened with these departments, and I connect with them all the time. I call these places, I talk to the chiefs, I talk to the firefighters. Go, hey, how's it going? How are you guys implementing it? What are you guys' hangups? And so what I've found is that almost all of these departments, just because they're very precise drills that they weren't used to. They were used to coming down and doing 4 hour drills that weren't very structured. So now they're very structured, and they might get it done in an hour and a half, but it's like they feel like they've actually learned, they've bettered themselves, they're more confident, and now they're actually going out, and then the next day, like they're getting pumped up, and now they're stretching lines, because I talk about stretching lines and the importance of the first line. And so then they're like, well, this guy's also like, when he's on an engine company, they're stretching lines to apartments and stuff. And so it's like, well, and like, so it motivates them. And so now they're doing a 15-minute drill the next day. And so, yeah, like that is like, I think what you're talking about is changing that culture. It's like, because it's not just search. You can't just start diving
That's
in
right.
windows and searching. It's like, no, dude, you better have the first two engine company, or the first line is the priority. I mean, you got to locate fire, and then you got to get the water on the fire. I'm like, if people are like, they make these statements like, well, yeah, you can dump 20 people in a building and for search, but it's more effective to do the first line. I'm like, yeah, but like, dude, no one's dumping 20 people in the building without the first line. That's not practical. It doesn't make any sense. I'm like, we still got to stop fire because you're not making anything more searchable. Everything's just getting worse.
Well,
So
that's that headline reading, right? Because
absolutely.
that's the thing, and that is what we have to be very cautious of. And I find a lot of times, you gotta put your hands up, and go, oh, whoa, take a breath. Take a breath before, overnight things are changing here. Like, we need to do the work, and it takes time. And I just can't stress that enough, is that because they saw a podcast with Justin McWilliams, or they're reading something on the Search Culture Facebook page, doesn't mean that is the next move tomorrow night. Like, there's work that has to be put in to weigh the value of it and to see if it even works and can be implemented in your own hometown. Have patience. Have patience.
Absolutely. Have patience. You got to get the buy-in from not just your house. You got to get it in the multiple houses, the battalions, and like you're saying, like, but it starts with like masking with gloves on, or setting your gear up. Like I'm like minuscule stuff, but like there's departments out there that don't set their gear up for fire. Okay, well, if you don't set your gear up for fire, and then you get up because you don't get a bunch of them. Right. And then it takes you longer to get there because it takes you longer to turn out, or your that's not set up, so you drop your hood. So then now you're getting your stress is going up, and so you're getting like you're not able to take more things in because you're stressed out already when you get on the fire ground. Then we're already behind, and if we can actually take more time, like you're saying, and slow things down, and be like, hey, if we set up our gear, we'll be more efficient and effective. If we can mask it with gloves on, we can reduce our stress. When we reduce our stress, we reduce our risk and the risk of the civilians on the inside. These are little minuscule things to me for sure, but to other departments they're bigger hurdles. And then that's when you start like bringing that culture in, and then that culture starts to grow. And then when you get that, it might take 6 months. It might take, who knows what it takes to get that kind of stuff on board. But yes, that it's stepping stones. It's not just all about search. It's about building the culture within a department to be able to operate on the fire ground, from the Proby firefighter to understand when we go to a public hallway, 3-story multifamily dwelling, and you're the first due engine, that this is what the first due engine is going to do. Also, the battalion chief already knows, hey, the first due engine, I know what they're going to do in this type of structure with unknown fire location or known fire location. I know what size of hose line they're going to pull. So they're not on the radio the whole time. And so, like, it's the minuscule of preparing ourselves before we get to the next step of everybody's searching their own, their own rooms and diving through their own windows and not communicating. There's a lot to it. Absolutely. We are the fire service. We are not the search department.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in that. And I think, too, the other thing that I want to stress and maybe talk to you a little bit about it is talking about setting yourself up for success, setting up your company, your department culture, all of that, right? It's all a long game and it takes time. And it's part of the process. A big part of that is the complacency that sets in. Slower departments, guys get super complacent. It can happen in busy departments too, but a lot of times where you're not going to fires or you're not searching on the regular. I mean, there are places in this country where search, they say it's a priority, but man, is it not a priority. And I think that's an interesting part of the conversation too, is that we've gotten comfortable. We've gotten to a place where I don't think we prioritize what search actually means or what it looks like. I think in some places search is an afterthought, which is kind of terrifying in some ways, but I've also seen it firsthand too. So it does exist. I think what I like about what you're saying, Justin, and I kind of just want to reiterate it, is that it is a process. It's not just dumping guys through a window or doing a right-handed search or whatever you want to say. There's a lot of other things that go into the process of search, and that is what the bigger conversation is about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I worry about the complacency, and I worry where search doesn't become a priority.
Yeah.
I worry where our administration, I don't want to say mid-administration, because a lot of times command staffs, I don't even think they're command staffs, the ones that don't believe in the mission of putting ourselves in harm's way, where we start backpedaling on the responsibilities of what firefighters are actually meant to do and supposed to be like. I'm starting to worry about some of the administrations that are out there. And we need to get them in touch with what the true mission of the fire service still stands for, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, what's interesting with that is I think that's two pieces to me. Is that one?
Shoot.
I believe, like you're saying, is that there's complacency about either we don't run a lot of fires, and so it's not that as big a deal, or we don't get grabs, and so it's not as big a deal. And so like we do get complacent in those areas. And then the other side is, I believe there's uppers that believe, like, lieutenants, captains, whatever, chiefs that believe that your life is in my hands. Like I'm 100% responsible for you. And like, that's not true. That is not true. Because if that was true, then I wouldn't have any decisions really to make as a captain on the fire ground. Is that I believe that the risk of my crew rests on my crew. Like, yeah, I might be the captain of it, but like, if I believe that their lives were solely in my hands, then what does that mean? That means that, like, you better be making sure that you prepare them every day. Like, if you believe that, then you'd be drilling on something probably 8 hours a day. We wouldn't have that complacency, because we'd be like, well, we have to make sure we're prepared, because if it's actually on me, no, it's not. It's on all of us. Now, there are levels within. So my job on, let's say, like first search or whatnot, like I have 4 guys on my rig, is that, yeah, I coordinate our search, and I'm overall coordination of it and have the radio, but we split 2 and 2 every fire except commercial, that 2 go on the front door and 2 go in windows on floor 2. And that I don't have overall seeing. I cannot see what they're doing at all times. I don't know where they're going at all times. But what we can do is prepare to understand what they're going to be doing, and that they're going to be locating fire, and that they already know we went to floor 2, and they understand what we're going to be doing. And then, the accountability is really realistic on all of us. It's like, what do we do to prepare it? Now, the complacency part is an interesting piece that you bring up, is that we get complacent because we don't run calls. We're not running fires, and we're not pulling out victims every call or every fire. But it's not about the number of victims that we pull out. per department. It's about, that's like the whole probability versus possibility thing. And we need to prepare for the probabilities. And probability, of we go to a fire, we need to pull a line. Well, how many engine companies pull a line every day and actually stretch and prepare for that? If we go to a house fire or any fire, we're gonna have to mask up. Well, how many people actually are able to mask up with gloves on or whatever they do in 15, 20 seconds to make sure we're all on the same page, we're prepared, and make sure that our gear's on correctly, so that our stress is less and we go inside. But the complacency of like Brush did that study of 99.8 rescues per day in the United States. Well, that's a low number. That was only out of the news. There's more than that happening. And if you start looking at that number, so just the other, last month I was in Missouri, and we're at the first class. So I'm like, dude, you will get a rescue. You guys are going to get a rescue. When I started, they were telling me no one's going to get a rescue. Within 24 hours,
I saw that
department made a rescue. The three dudes that were in the class made a rescue. Guess what happened within 48 hours after that? They had another rescue. And it's like, and these aren't huge departments. Right. And it's happening though. And the people are like, oh, and like, there are things I believe that the prepared do get
rewarded, for lack of better words, right? I mean, we want to practice our craft, right? I call it a reward. You get to make a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. But if they went to that fire and didn't go to that class, there still be a victim in that fire. Mm-hmm. The difference is the outcome. That's where it is, because maybe they would have gone fire attack, read all these, whatever they're doing, and then that victim would have been found on, like you were talking about earlier, like a complacency search, and then that victim's outcome wasn't as good. And then would they actually hold themselves accountable to timestamps and how they fought that fire? Now, being on the positive side, they'll look at that and they'll see that success, and then their department's going to grow from this.
No doubt. I agree. That is where, I mean, that is exciting, right? For those guys to be able to take something or take pieces of a class that they just took, making themselves better by taking a class and furthering their education in the fire service, and then being able to put it to practical experience and use and perfect a positive outcome. How is that not infectious? I mean, the whole department has got to be rallying behind that. That's a win. We need more wins like that.
We do need more wins, and we need to celebrate those wins. People are like, oh man, it was just a big deal. I'm like, oh, it's no big deal. It's just a child. It's just someone's son. It's someone's daughter. It's someone's mother. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it is a big deal. It's a life. There's nothing more important in this world than a child's life. Nothing. But think about that as like, there's not much more important than a mother or a father of a child, of like how they're going to grow, who they're going to be later on. I'm like, we impact the world, the life, outcomes of where people are going to go in their life. It's pretty cool. So that department also, they didn't do it they didn't necessarily operate like I would, but what they did do is they did multiple things they wouldn't normally do. They didn't normally send two people inside a window, and they didn't normally extend beyond the door, which they did do that day. But it goes back to what you're saying. It takes steps. They're not going to operate like me. I love that they did not operate like I did, because they're not in that space yet. They don't have the experience of it yet. They need to build their department's culture around understanding, okay, this is what we did. We were able to do this because we took these other steps. Our goal might be over here, but we have to take some steps first to understand how to get to that goal. And now we have one more experience we can share, which I think is something that drastically lacks when we bring things back to our departments. We go from not doing something to a full commitment, where we can actually talk about doing, going through, well, let's be comfortable on it. Let's have experience with it. Let's have our failures. And let's start with step 2, and then let's work through a couple steps for this. As in, some departments that are pushing, like I pushed 2 people through the window. What's an interesting topic is that people typically, a huge majority of the time, send the least senior firefighter or non-officer through the window. And they only send one person. And I'm thinking, so the least experienced person, and a lot of that has to do with because the officer has the tick, and they're talking about tick and blah blah blah. And I don't want to get too deep in this, but I'm like, let's just think about this. It's nighttime. We throw the ladder. We throw it to floor 2. I cannot see as the officer what the conditions are going on in that window. So when we talk about the experience and taking that window out, it's a decision we have to make before we break that window. Is that why would I send a guy that just has never been to a fire, only been to a handful of fires, to make a decision to even break the window? Then they're going to dump themselves inside, and then they have other decisions to make from there. When if we just, and I'm just talking about not operating like my department, I'm talking about steps. What if we took the officer, flipped them, and then you put your officer, and these are just thoughts, officer through the window, they make that decision, they go to the hallway, they have the tick, the other firefighter goes in, they can search that room. And then the officer's already inside making decisions for them. So I'm just talking about like not operating like us, but actually just flipping scripts and asking why and what really makes sense for us.
So I'm wrapping my head around this, right?
Yeah.
And not that I maybe lack for better words, but I'm listening to what you're talking about, and I think all of it makes a lot of sense. Where you are in Oregon, you're putting firemen in a working fire, you're putting firemen, you're VESing basically every building with your rescue company. You have a 4-man rescue company?
I'm a 4-man rescue company, yes.
So officer and backseat, and then you have chauffeur and backseat, however you break it up. But you have an inside-outside team, or
Yeah.
do you okay. So is it officer and firefighter making entry and starting search from the ground floor up, or whatever, starting at, making entry, going to work, and then your outside team is going to throw portables and make entry together in the same window?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So our 2 firefighters are our inside team. They take the can and they search for fire because the driver is not ready to go. They're a little bit behind. So also the officer, we are with the driver because I want to get 2 sides of the building, 3 sides, and I make decisions on the outside. I'm like looking where the fire is. I'm making decisions like, okay, fire tax can go here. We're going to force this door. Okay, I bet you, I'm looking at the overall fire ground operations. So when the 2 firefighters come up, they know they're going through fire. I tell them where I'm going to typically go. Like, they already know we're going to floor 2. And so we're more working together, conjoined. That's why they go in first, because they're quick and I'm outside. So that way, when the driver catches up, we've already had a ladder thrown. I'm already climbing the ladder, breaking the window. He climbs up in after me. I can share the knowledge if he needs to know where the other guys are going. He already should. And so he's with me, who's already made these decisions. I'm like, hey, dude, fire's on floor 2, Bravo Charlie corner. So that's how we operate.
So your inside team then is going straight to the scene of the fire and working their way back. They're gonna try to control fire and then start their search away from the fire. You guys are going to the floor above over a portable and making entry and effecting search. And you'll go outside of that room. You'll take the common space as well and continue on.
Absolutely. Our department, we don't have the term VES. We might use it every once in a while, but that's only because of history. But yes,
right.
We enter windows, and we always continue on unless we're pushed out by fire.
Okay. Do you, just for my own thoughts, do you carry your own portables on the rescue, or are you pulling off of a ladder company that's on scene?
We have our own portables. We have a 20-foot extension and a 28-foot extension.
Okay. So I got to think the majority, I would think a lot of your first due then is 2.5-story ordinaries, like just residential, single, multiple dwellings, something like that.
So also my department, like my rig, all of our trucks are dry and our heavy rescue is dry. And so we have our own areas too. So we're first due on our own fires without engine companies on scene. So we operate drastically different than anybody else. We search above and are ahead of an engine company a lot of the time. So if I go out and go left, I'm either into apartments or I'm into 5,000, 6,000 square foot, 3 stories, 2-story in the front, 3-story in the back. If I go right, I'm going to mobile homes, 1-story and 1.5 stories, 2.5 stories.
Okay. So the reason why I ask, right, I'd like to get an idea because, it's important, right, to kind of wrap my brain around all this while we're talking, just to get a nice sense of your first due. What I find interesting, and I wanted to bring it up, and I made a note before we even started talking today, is legacy construction versus new construction.
Yeah.
And, in my area, we have a tremendous uptick in new construction, which we're seeing very quick failures within buildings under, heavy fire conditions and so on. And so that is becoming a true concern that we really didn't have with dimensional lumber and legacy construction. And so that has certainly got to be swaying some of the conversation. I don't know if you're having an uptick in construction there with your 3,000 square foot walkouts in the rear, 3-story in the rear type thing, but that's what we're having here. And those buildings under fire conditions, we're having very early collapse and very early failures of the structural systems within these buildings. That is raising concern about your typical and standard operations that we've been doing for 100 years.
Yeah. When you talk about like early collapse, are you talking about like the roof is burning through and coming down? Like what kind of collapses are you guys having?
I'm even talking a failure of the engineered lumber between floors, right? Large span basements. So you have large square footage homes with long span engineered construction or lumber, engineered lumber that's failing quickly under fire loads, and you're seeing an internal collapse even before you got the roof coming in.
Yeah.
And that is becoming, we have, literally a lot of this newer construction here are more commercial building fires than they are residential. It's only because the larger square footage buildings single family homes are starting to pop up. We're a community 25 minutes outside of New York City. And so, you're seeing a lot of, especially during COVID, we had a tremendous amount of New York City wealth start moving into the area, and they're knocking down homes and building, McMansions, 5,000-6,000 square foot homes. And with that comes larger spans, bigger great rooms, larger basements, bigger bedrooms, and you're talking engineered lumber and so on. So my point is, I think another part of the conversation that's really important is, as I'm sitting here asking questions about your first due, I'm thinking about mine, right? This is how I enter the conversation. And I'm really starting to think about, we've been talking about how important the integrity of the foyer and stairs are. They've always been before, but we've always been able to make stairs, even under really heavy fire conditions, because of dimensional lumber. Today, we got staircases and overhangs collapsing on the foyers quicker than ever before. So we really have to start putting some mindset into the variations, and that's where we really have to get into the details. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's where like the problems are local, and that like we were whatever we talked about some time ago is like those are the local things. Is like like we have cities here, like, so our department is a district. We have 300 square miles, so like the cities that we protect a bunch of different cities, and some of the cities that are like 60,000 are balloon frame. So those areas are balloon frame. Now they're all, and then they're like, and now they're like ADUs. I mean, they got 6, 8, different stairwells in there. Now it's all messed up. You guys have those.
I got it.
And then we have obviously battalions and in cities that are all just newer construction for sure, that are all 2000s and newer or something of the sort, that size is getting larger. But we've been dealing with like what you're talking about for years. I mean, we have tons of new shit over here. Like when you guys talk about like, do you guys go on roofs over there, peak roofs?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So like, like it's interesting, talk about some people, like they don't go on peak roofs, or they're more worried about lightweight construction or whatnot. And we like, it's like, to me, it's like, it's not lightweight construction. It's just construction for us. I mean, we get up on these roofs, but like we make those decisions based off of like, we go up, where's the fire? Is a fire in the attic yet? We rely on our truck companies when they get up there. They have a process. Like they go up there and they give a roof report of what is happening. And then that way that they, obviously they go back to command, but the roof team's making the decision of, are they going to stay up there? Are they going to vent? Where are they going to vent and whatnot? And like by going up there and sending their senior guy up there with the hook first to make those decisions on the fire ground operations. Sure. And then if they can't, they get back on the air and they're like, hey dude, nope, we can't open this up. We're going to go, we're going to go horizontal.
Well, that's what I love too, because what you're saying is just reinforces what this whole conversation's been about, is trusting the process. You got to put the work in, and we have to let our people work. Like, we have to create that culture where we educate and train, so that for you, when your two more junior guys in your company are making the inside team, you got to trust that they have the tools and the training and the know-how to go do what they need to do. It's just like going to the roof. It's the same type of thing. I agree with you. I think sometimes we get lost in the I don't want to say this, we break it down almost too much sometimes.
Yep.
Sometimes we have to be able to understand that the fire service is all about calling audibles, and it's all about trusting your people and making the decisions in the positions that they're in. We have to give them those tools to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you're talking about calling an audible, which is interesting, is that, some people, like some departments, they have the first new engine company does this, second new engine company does this. They already have it all played out. Some departments are in the middle, and then there's some that don't want those kind of operations at all because, well, as an officer, I always want to be able to make a decision. And it's like, well, if you have a plan A, it like then you can audible. I'm like, that is a decision. Like, but a plan A at default is pretty good in a lot of operations. Like, why would we, like, to me, I'm like, why would you not have a plan A? Because it decreases talking, but it actually increases communication when we have a layout and an understanding of how we're going to operate as first due engine company, as the search company, as the roof company and stuff. So I believe that having those conversations is nice. Now we get into the weeds, like you're talking about, like breaking stuff really down. It's like, obviously that gets into more of company level stuff of like, because like you break stuff way too far down. It's like for a whole department or even the fire department, the fire service in general. It's like we have to have the plan A, plan B, plan C, and then we have to have audibles that are going to be for our construction or our
100%. 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think what I'm trying to get at is, and I'm trying to find the right way to put it, but firefighting is and supposed to be pretty simple.
Yeah.
We make it much more difficult than it needs to be. And I think a lot of times it's a lot of I don't know, word salad, right? I mean, I really do. I think we muddy the process because we don't trust the process anymore. It's more important to get a couple extra words in to make sure they really understand, instead of just trusting that experience and over time they'll get it. And I think that again is that theory versus practical, and we have to be careful of that. And I just hate how sometimes we take the simplicity out of firefighting. It should be pretty simple, I think.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
We do. We get very we need to bring things more simple, for sure. Yes.
And trust that people have the foundation to understand what you're telling them. Like we've gotten to this micromanaging position today where we have to tell them A through H what has to be done. Sometimes you just have to. I had a kid come up to me the other day. I spoke the other night at an event. He came up to me and he started hitting me with all these things. And I just looked at him and I go, "How old are you?" He's like 25. And I was like, sometimes when I tell you, you just got to believe me. You just got to believe me. Like I don't have to tell you every little detail. I know you want every little detail. Your generation wants that. That's your makeup. You want to know what the expectation is. But sometimes just trust the fucking process, bro. Just trust the process. Super important, man. Super important.
Yeah. Well, like you're talking about the firefighter rescue survey, right? Dude, those numbers. So when I do classes, like, I was one of the original, like, 3 guys or whatever the hell that, like, started that shit. And so you'd think that I would really, really push all this stuff. When you go into, like, when I do classes or, different things, is I actually, I put a lot of numbers up there, but I cross out a lot more numbers than I present because people want all this information, right? They want, oh my God, I want those numbers. I need those numbers. Like, dude, what are you guys doing? What are you going to do with those numbers? Nothing. Stop it. We need to look at what is the reason we are here and what helps support that. And what is it going to change our strategies and our tactics? Yes or no? As in, people want to know well, where are people at? What, like you have bedrooms, whatever, 44% of the time, okay? And those are single family, multifamily, non-high rise department. Like you got to understand that that's like 4 stories and lower, multifamilies and single family dwellings. But then they're like, well, where's the second highest place? And where's they're like, well, how many? Like, oh, there's 10% in bedrooms. There's whatever 12% in the hallway, and I'm like, none of that matters. Those numbers do not matter because they don't change how you search. And they're like, oh yeah, it does. I'm like, like the way that you stretch a line, or you're going to search off the line. I'm like, I don't search off a line. Like as in like that nozzle needs to go to from the outside to the fire, and then once we get overwhelmed with the fire, then we'll search that immediate area that's affected by the area. But like, I'm not going to go and go, well, 18% is in the family room, so I'm going to go to the family room. No, you use the building as a layout to help your search. So there's too many numbers out there. There's too much data. There's too much information that people want to know of like you're saying, as in, well, what about this? And what about that? And it's too deep.
You make a very good point, and I want to stress that because I think people are starving for information today, and information is readily available. So they take those numbers, and then they want to form their diehard opinion, black and white opinion, based on those numbers, when in fact it is there as a reference, as a guide, but it certainly doesn't dictate policy, procedure, and guidelines. And I think that is a very big distinction that has to be discussed. When I look at all the data is super important. All the UL testing, all that stuff. I get it. There's science behind all this. There's numbers, there's pie charts, there's graphs, there's information being compiled.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's the frickin' Bible. What
Yep.
we have to do is use that information to best form operational opinions based upon how we operate. And are we doing it that might reflect the numbers? And we have to be careful in that distinction, Justin. I really believe that. I think we have too many people that take the information and that's all they take out of it. And they don't do any more work to integrate that survey to their everyday.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So people like like in the very beginning, like years ago, people want numbers to change, and same with chiefs. They want numbers to change and shit like that. Okay, well, when I'm selling a chief, okay, if you want me to sell you on some numbers, I'll give you some numbers. But when you're actually having discussion and stuff, is that it's not the numbers, it's the story. Is that our experience? If our experience lines up with those numbers, great. But people think they're starving for these numbers and shit. When in actual, they don't actually use the numbers, or they manipulate them, or they don't purposely manipulate the numbers. I don't believe a lot of them don't. They just believe, they look at the number and then they're like, oh, well, this makes sense. And it's like, I don't even know. The one earlier. So Dale Jenkins put out a thing about the pie graph about locating a victim with a tick or hands-on and the percentages. And he's like, what are your guys' thoughts? And, some people are like, well, don't you think that, it's kind of skewed because not everybody wears a tick? And I'm like, dude, that doesn't even matter. Like, it's not even that. It's like you have to look at time. You have to look at conditions. Like, it's not just a number. Like,
Yes.
that number doesn't mean shit.
Yes.
And so then someone referenced a study that the tick actually reduced the time to locate victims and or percentages people were missed. And I've looked into this study, and I couldn't actually find the real study. I only found an article that referenced the study, and I'm looking into it. But my questions are: were they real structure fires? Were they fully furnished? Were they actually had clothes and bedding and shoes? Because if not, and if they weren't real buildings, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Your training building does not replicate a real building, most likely, especially back in the 90s. There's no fucking way. I guarantee most likely they didn't have furniture in there, and they didn't have clothing and shoes and toys. And so my point is that, yeah, if I go into an empty building or one that just has some furniture but nothing else extra, like when I look at my room, I have probably 1,000 items in this one room. They only have 3 probably. Like, yeah, a tick is going to be really easy because it's really open. Well, yeah, that study's going to go, well, of course, because they're going to go in there and they're going to look around and they're going to see one thing that they have to go beyond, but that's it. You can clear an empty room with a tick.
You have to interpret the data based upon your own experience, knowledge, and operational guidelines.
Yes. Yep.
That's
Which
it.
a lot of people don't have that. They don't have the experience to back it. Less than half the people. I mean, I have no idea what the real percentage is, but less than half the people in the United States Fire Service have had hands on for a rescue.
Right.
So, other than that, it's theory for them. But guess what? Just because you've had 1, 2, 3, 5 rescues, it's still not enough experience. I've had experiences. I've had quite a few experiences, but I'm not an experienced rescue man. Like, I don't care if you had 20. I mean, I do care that you had 20, but realistically, you can teach me things that you failed on and learned on that were there, but you can't actually, as a whole, that's not enough rescues to actually give me overall real, like, change the fire service strategies and tactics. We can do it together, though, with our stories.
Yeah.
With our stories.
Yeah, I wrote down something you said before. It's not the numbers, it's the story. And, I say it all the time in the fire service that the stories matter. The storytelling matters. I mean, that back bumper, that kitchen table, those stories matter. That is part of training. That is part of bettering yourself, is going all in and sitting around and listening and talking and hearing other people's experiences as well. It's super important. We have to do that. And then you have to interpret that for yourself and make decisions based upon your own experience and the theory that you're reading or being taught. And, very important. Where does this come from for you, man? You're a pretty passionate guy. You're pretty intense, I think. Are you like this in everything in your world? Like, do you go all in? Like, I don't know. Like, what do you do? Do you do anything outside of the fire service? You fly, fish, you hunt? Like, what do you do?
I'll get in anything they want. I went overnight backpacking, like way out in the boonies with a buddy because he knew I wanted to go, so I go there. I snowboard with my girls.
But are you like an all-in guy? Like, if you're gonna go snowboarding, you're like an all-in guy?
Not with my girls.
Okay.
I'm all in for family, and so when I go up with them, like I ride fakie, and so that because they're not amazing snowboarders, so I just ride fakie. Yep. So I just,
cool.
But then again, I guess that's all in because I'm like, well, I'm all in on fakie, and I'm trying other stuff going fakie. So yeah, I'm pretty intense. Like, yeah, I'm pretty all in. Over the last probably 5, 6, 7 years, I've tried to chill on some stuff. The things used to bother me. I mean, the people that the coffee's brewing and it's half done, and someone pours himself a cup of Joe and like it's not done. It used to piss me off. So every probably 3 to 4 months in my life, I pick something that bugs me and it shouldn't bug me. So that was one of them years ago, and I stopped. That's my next.
So when that coffee is still coming through the filter and hitting the hot plate and yeah.
It used to bother me. Now it doesn't. I don't like, and so yeah, dude, I'm all. If I'm in, I'm in. I'm definitely in on the fire.
Why are you literally mentally focusing on some things that irk you to try to get better around that? Like, what is it for you? Is it just, I always talk about, for me, I know with maturity comes clarity, and I'm not saying I'm mature by any means, but I'm 47 years old. I'm becoming more mature. There's no doubt, right? So it's like, for me, it's the important things, and I've come to prioritize like what's important and so on. But is that what it is for you? Maturity comes clarity?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Dude, I mean, I wasn't the best human being 20 years ago.
It.
I wasn't the best husband for the first, 5 years or something like that. I wasn't always the best friend or officer or anything like that.
Yep.
But over time, like, I think just I would never change any of that because that's who I am today.
Yeah.
But man, maturity comes clarity, and then my what really matters to me has changed versus drinking and partying and having fun and the biggest laughs versus actually enjoying people and having people enjoy me, even though like I might have to hold back, but after a while it's like, yeah, dude, it feels good. I don't have to ram my shit down everybody else's throat all the time and light people up. Like, that's how I used to come across. I can get the same things. I can actually, my outcome is better in life with all relationships and everything if I step back and I hope, like, I think about these things and go a little bit slower, and put others first. Put others, not always first, but my wife. My wife becomes before my kids. My kids are not before my wife, because that it doesn't work the other way very well. And so, just
I get it.
Yeah.
Listen. I've been there, and what's fun about all of that and what you're saying is, frankly, just trust the process, and you always have the ability to become a better person. You can always pick up your game if you're not happy with where you are. And I talk a lot about that, man. And everything that I talk about, there's a slide in my program that just says I'm guilty. I go, everything I talk about today, I'm guilty. I've done all these things. It's what you do with it and how you bounce back from them. I think that matters. But my man, thank you. Thank you very much for joining me today. I try to keep these to about an hour. It's easy listening for a workout or in the car. And I really enjoyed the conversation with you today. I didn't know where this was going to go. I was kind of excited to have you on, so I'm glad we were able to make this work today. But thank you. Thanks for joining me on the show, man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I appreciate you reaching out. I love it. I love that you didn't have a skip for this at all. And I'm like,
I never do.
I think you have some of the best outcomes because of that. It's natural.
Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you. I think that's what matters most, man. People don't want to hear a script. And I literally do 10 minutes of research before I hit record. And I think that's how you get some of the most important authenticity out of a conversation. And so thank you for trusting me with the show today. Thanks for joining me. A lot of fun, man. So I appreciate you. Where can people reach out if they're not familiar? Believe it or not, there's probably people out there that are not familiar with some of the things you're involved with. So just maybe a quick rundown where people can find you or reach out if they're interested in talking with you.
There's only one way. 503-729-2734. You can text me your name and where you're from beforehand, and then call me. If you text me, that way, because my phone's on silent 100% of the time, and that way I know you're going to call. And if you call, I know you're willing to spend some time. If it's a text message, dude, I don't have time for that. I'll lose it. If you email, so that's the only way. Call me. FaceTime.
Good deal, man.
FaceTime is not bad. I love FaceTime.
Right. Good. Justin McWilliams out of the West Coast. Thank you, brother, for joining me today. Stay right here. I'm going to sign off the podcast. I'll come right back to you, okay?
All right, bud.
Cool. Guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. What a great conversation today. Firefighter Rescue Survey, search culture on Facebook. Justin McWilliams knocked it out of the park. What a great conversation. Do me a favor. I say this at the end of every single episode. Take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.